Questions for reflection. In this passage from 2 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul continues his instruction on generosity to the Christians in that community. In fact, to all Christians. He reminds them that we are to sow generously, to reflect the very generosity of God, and to remember that God is the source of all. This passage is one more call to evangelical simplicity. Simplicity is not about the quantity of the goods of the earth we possess. It's about our relationship to them. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's Matthew 6:21. How often have we heard the saying, money is the root of all evil? That is not what the Apostle Paul actually wrote to Timothy. He wrote 2 letters to Timothy, a young disciple who had been placed in leadership over the Christian community at Ephesus, a city known for its wealth and luxury. St. Paul traveled there to plant the nascent Christian church, knowing that those Christian believers would face certain dangers when dealing with wealth. He reminded Timothy, and I quote, "Indeed, religion with contentment is a great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, just as we shall not be able to take anything out of it. If we have food and clothing, we shall be content with that." Those who want to be rich are falling into temptation and into a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires, which plunge them into ruin and destruction. And then he continued, and listen, "For the love of money is the root of all evils. And some people in the desire for it have strayed from the faith and have pierced themselves with many pains. But you, man of God, avoid all this. Instead, pursue righteousness, devotion, faith, love, patience, and gentleness." That's 1 Timothy 6:6-11. Money is not evil, nor is it proof of God's blessing and favor, a view that insults Christians who struggle daily to survive. Both errors are rooted in a mistaken foundation. They're self-centered rather than God and other-centered. The phrase love of money speaks to the heart. In the biblical language, the heart is the center of a man or woman, the place where they make their fundamental decisions concerning life. When we love the goods of the earth more than we love the one who created them and entrusts them to us, we commit the sin of idolatry. A destitute person can be just as obsessed with money as a wealthy one who's given over to greed. Greed is a form of idolatry. In another letter to the Philippians, St. Paul explained his own approach to material things in these words, and I quote, "I know indeed how to live in humble circumstances. I know also how to live with abundance. In every circumstance and in all things I've learned the secret of being well fed and of going hungry, of living in abundance and of being in need." That's Philippians 4:12. Paul was free from the love of money. We can be as well. Are we seeking to live evangelical simplicity in accordance with our state in life and vocation? Our responsorial psalm follows through on this theme, reminding us that God is generous and provides generously to those who love and obey Him. Alleluia, the psalmist writes, "How blessed is anyone who fears Yahweh, who delights in His commandments. His descendants shall be powerful on earth. The race of the honest shall receive blessings, riches and wealth for his family. His uprightness stands firm forever." End quote. Do we delight in the commandments of the Lord? Do we recognize the blessings God has given to us and regularly thank Him for them? We can, we should. The psalmist shows us the way. In another translation of Matthew chapter 6, a portion of which is our gospel text for today's Holy Mass, we read in verse 1, "Beware of practicing your piety before men in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven." That's what Jesus is getting at in this instruction to His disciples. Notice what comes through in each of the instructions on giving alms, fasting, and praying. The focus of all 3 is to be the Lord and not recognition. It is indeed a matter of the heart. The heart is the center of a person, the place from which he or she makes those choices which affect the world within them and around them. The Catholic Catechism summarizes this truth in these words, and I quote, "The heart is the seat of the moral personality." That's paragraph 2517. Not only do the words of Jesus teach us the way of the heart, His very life speaks His sacred heart is always set on the Father and doing the Father's will. Devotion to the heart of Jesus reminds us that it is in the sacred humanity of Jesus that we find the pattern for becoming fully human ourselves. In His incarnation, His saving life and death and resurrection, we receive both the pattern and the means to become more like Him. The leaders of the Second Vatican Council, in their beautifully written pastoral constitution on the mission of the Church in the modern world, wrote, and I quote, "The truth is that only in the mystery of the incarnate Word does the mystery of man take on light. For Adam, the first man, was a figure of Him who was to come, namely Christ the Lord. Christ, the final Adam, by the revelation of the mystery of the Father and His love, fully reveals man to man himself and makes His supreme calling clear." That's paragraph 22. Where have we directed our heart? Does our piety reflect this direction?